this is going to be, we're continuing on from where we were last week. And again, it's just, as I said, Joying Like Jesus is the title of this this next unit, I guess, for what we're doing. And today's lesson is sharing Christ's love. And there's, and as we get into that, we'll talk about that a little more. But I'm going to start off with this morning with a little bit of an environmental issue. Anyone ever heard of something called DHMO?
Heard of what?
DHMO. It's a chemical. Causes severe burns when it comes in contact. Causes millions in damage to materials each year. It's even responsible for thousands of deaths each year. Accidental exposure, even accidental ingestion. It's been found in tumors and acid rain. And recently, a few years ago, there was actually a discussion in Idaho to ban this substance. Anyone ever? No one's heard of that?
Found in Mountain View.
What's that?
Found in Mountain View.
Actually, it is. DHMO. That stands for dihydrogen monoxide. The formula is H2O. Now, what it was, there was a fifth grader that did a science fair project on that and just used the term dihydrogen monoxide, talked about how it's found in every school, it's almost in every household causing, and actually set out a poll at their science fair station, and I think it was like, the poll was something like 95% of people voted to ban it. Now, I think there's a lot of lessons right there that we can learn. It just goes to show that, you can take a lot of things that, was there anything in there I said that wasn't true? How does water burn you? Steam, right? Obviously, causes millions in damage to materials every year, whether it may be a pipe bursting in your house or a flood. If you leave, I used to remember toys I grew up, if you left it outside in the rain, they got rusted real fast, so they corrode. Obviously, thousands of deaths each year from accidental exposure, ingestion, obviously drowning, electrocution, things of that. So everything I said there was true, wasn't it? But obviously, we're not going to ban water. Why? Does water have good points?
Can't live without it.
Yeah, can't live without it. It helps clean things, keeps cool, keeps our engine cool. So, a lot of lessons there, and that's not where I'm getting to. So, on this, but how is water? I guess what we're saying here is this: what are the situations where water would be bad? Just mention something right there.
Where water's bad.
Yeah.
When you got too much.
Too much
You
of
got
it, yeah.
Floods and all.
An extreme?
Flood causes
An
everything.
extreme, right? Yeah. So anything in extreme. So can you have too much of it? Can you have too little of it? An extreme, yeah. Want that happy little medium. So it can be good. It's bad. A friend of mine used to say, when it comes to your house, anytime water is where it's not supposed to be, usually that's not a good thing. I think he was talking about the other day. You left, you flooded one of your guests right there. You flooded her. So not a good thing there at that time, was it? But I almost did the same thing when we was letting it. I was letting the upstairs sink drip, and I didn't realize the stopper had been pushed. So I come up, all of a sudden I'm walking through, and there's some water dripping through the ceiling. And I'm like, oh crap, we've had a pipe burst. And I started looking where it was, and I was like, I don't think there's any plumbing going through right there. And what it was, it rolled. I caught it just in time to where it had ran out over the sink because it didn't have one of those drains in it or whatever for that. So what we see right there is, again, water's a good thing, but again, things in extremes can have negative consequences. So basically, controlled versus uncontrolled water. That's kind of where the book kind of gets in, the teacher's edition talks about that. But, when water is controlled, usually, like I said, it's a very helpful thing. For example, dams, Tennessee River, TVA. I can remember, we had one of those. They used to take us to the we'd go to the library and she'd show us a movie. At least thought she was for entertainment, basically just to keep us out of our hair, what it was. Now that I've been on the other side of it, but it's called the TVA, and it kind of showed the Tennessee Valley here prior to they built all the dams, and it was like an area that was really prone to flooding, a lot of flooding and stuff during that time. So when they built the dams, backed up the river at places, created reservoirs, obviously for hydroelectric power and stuff, but it also helped control the floods. So that's kind of what we're getting to here. So from there, how is all this going to work into our lesson? And today, like I said, it's just 3 verses, and we're really going to focus on verse 9 of Philippians 1, 9 through 11. I'm just going to read these here, and we'll get an idea. And it says, "In this I pray, that your love may abound, yet more and more in knowledge and in all judgment, that you may approve things that are excellent, that you may be sincere and without offense till the day of Christ, being filled with the fruits of righteousness, which are by Jesus Christ unto the glory and praise of God." So as we look at that, we see a couple of things there that it talks about. So let me ask you this, in the terms, same things we used with water. We see extremes. What about love? Can love be a bad thing ever?
According to what you're loving.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let me finish. Biblical love. Or what's perceived as biblical love. Okay. We'll see. So it's like the book talks about, and kind of gets into it there a little bit. And let's see. Let me find it here. And again, when we're talking about biblical love, let's go back to what we said right here. Let's just go this. "I pray that your love may abound yet more and more in knowledge and in all judgment." So let's just start off with this. Who is the object of the love mentioned right there? Who's Paul talking to there? People? Could it be God? I mean, it doesn't really specify, does it? Or could it be all in the same? Christians. People, the brethren, right? Because, fill in the blank. Blank is love. God is love. And let's look at a couple here. I got these verses here from 1 John 4, chapter 6. 1 John chapter 4, verse 16. "And we have known and believed the love that God hath to us. God is love, and he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in God, and God in him." And then on down into verse 21 of the same chapter. "And this commandment have we from him, that he who loveth God love his brother also." So basically, for us that know Jesus, really doesn't matter. It's addressing us. If he is addressing God, because God is love, and if God's in us, then we should have what in us then? We got love in us, don't we? So from that, as we get to it right here, and we're getting to a point, just bear with me right here. And when we talk about this love, and Brother Nathan described it, what's the biblical love? How would you define that? What's the term? The love. Agape love, yes. How would you define that?
all encompassing.
Okay. All encompassing.
Unconditional.
Unconditional.
It's like romantic love.
Tell me like this is the first time I've heard this term, agape. What does that mean?
Loving like God does.
Loving like God does. How did God probably show his love the most? What was the ultimate act, you think?
Send Jesus.
In other words, sacrifice. That's what one of the terms I found for agape love. Self-sacrifice is the type of love that we're referencing right here. It's we look at this, and let's go ahead and look at just another verse here. You don't have to look it up. I got it. Matthew 22, 37 through 40. If you remember, the Pharisees were testing Jesus. And what's the greatest commandment? And what was Jesus' reply? What was the greatest commandment according to Jesus?
Love God.
With all your heart, soul, and mind. And then what was the second one?
Love others.
Love others as we love ourselves. And it says in verse 40, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets, don't they? So it gets down right there that, I guess you can say it's about love. When you get, and that's the thing I always said with, when I'm struggling, or going through some times there, I always have a saying, I'm just going to get back to fundamentals. And I always go back to those, if I don't feel like I'm where I need to be, usually it's the first one. I need to do a better job of loving God. And usually if you're doing that, the second commandment follows right in behind it, doesn't it? So always, like I tell my guys, get back, when things are going south, get back to fundamentals. That's what I tell my kids in the offensive line room. So as it looks at right here, as we go, biblical love is just one thing here. Biblical love for God and others is the supreme virtue of the Christian life. Would you agree with that statement? Biblical love for others? Yeah, I think so. I think that's the number one thing. If you had to, and we'll get into some things there. It says from this commentary, it says, you may have assumed that Paul's prayer is directed towards the love of brethren, but please notice that he does not state the object of the love. Of course, love for God and love for others can't be separated. As John puts it, God is love, and one who abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. And this is the commandment we have from him, that one who loves God should love his brother also. So, question. Can you say, is love optional for a believer? No, it's not, is it? It's one of the characteristics that we say. But it kind of gets back into it. I think now in today's society, that's getting, it's getting, I guess that message is getting mixed up, isn't it? Because for some people, as far as agape love or biblical love, they are defining it things I don't think it's quite what it means to be. And we're going to kind of we're going to work all this back around to my water example here in just a second. It says that Jesus summed up the law with the two commandments, to love God and to love our neighbor. And if you are not growing in love for God and others, are you growing as far as in your Christian walk? A lot of times, if you just ask anybody the word love, what are some of the terms they may use to describe it?
That's good.
If you just ask, if you'd walk up on somebody on the street who's walking down the street, hey, what do you think of when you hear the word love?
I think a lot of society just thinks about romantic love.
Yeah, probably romantic love, or even if you just said, if you give that, warm, fuzzy, sentimental feelings, huh? And for sometimes, some people say being nice all the time to everyone. That's how some people describe it. It says here. But here's the deal that we got to understand. Biblical love is kind of being, when it's taken to the extreme, biblical love, and I don't think it is never going to be in opposition to what? What's that?
To God.
God and his doctrine and truth. So as we get to it here, it says biblical love is never in opposition to truth, but rather is based on or is in line with the truth. Biblical love is a caring, self-sacrificing commitment that seeks the highest good for the one loved. And so as we get to that right there, we're kind of getting into the extremes. And like I said, just be patient right here. So as we go back to this first verse, there are a couple of words right here that we look at. It says that your love may abound yet more and more in knowledge and in all judgment. So knowledge, and another word that has come up in some of these as I study is discernment. Love and knowledge and discernment. So how would you describe, as we look at it right here, what's true knowledge? from a biblical stance. True knowledge. There's a Greek word to describe this type. It's called epignosis, epignosis, I guess, which is a Greek word that refers to an intensive or deep spiritual knowledge. It says a Greek scholar used this word, especially of the knowledge of God and of Christ, as being perfection of knowledge. It says, since God cannot be known except as He revealed Himself, how can we obtain true knowledge of God? I guess that's the question I'm trying to get to. How is it revealed to us today?
Spirit that shall guide thee into all truth.
What's that?
Spirit that shall guide thee into all truth.
Okay, yeah. Spirit that guides thee to all truth. And what's usually a lot of times that Spirit is going to guide us where to find the truth.
Study to show thyself approved unto God.
Yep. Study, and again, as we get to that, where do we confirm that? I think I know where I'm trying to get to right here. Where's it written out for us?
The Bible.
The Word. So all that, as I said, knowledge in the Word, study of the Word. So it says, it's revealed through all that. Through we learn about God by studying His Word, and we say right here that God Himself is love. And to grow in true knowledge of God is to grow to understand what true love is. This true knowledge of God is revealed in His Word is essential if you want to grow in love. What about this statement? We can't know love by looking at our culture. Will we agree with that? So the true love, as we're getting to right here, is found through the knowledge, through knowledge of God and through His Word, and that's kind of what we're trying to get, and that's kind of where we get to here with the extremities. We can only know what love looks like by studying God's character as revealed in the Lord Jesus Christ, who is God in human flesh. So let me ask you this: I think we can all agree here, Jesus is the epitome of love, correct? Was Jesus always nice and sweet and just syrupy to people? What would be an example?
Casting people out of the temple, money changers.
Yeah, people right there, the money changers. What else? Other examples?
Scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites.
Scribes, Pharisees, and hypocrites, okay. What about His disciples? You ever get rough with them every now and then?
Be behind me, Savior.
Yeah. Lots of examples there, isn't it? And I think, as I said, it used to be what would Jesus do? It's cliche now stuff, but I think for me that gets back to what I call fundamentals. If I'm not for sure how to react, I try to find examples of how Jesus might have reacted in those situations. So it says, if you want to read some examples there from this, it says Matthew 23 has great examples of Jesus, laying into the Pharisees, confronting His disciples, yet He's the epitome of love. So I think we see kind of where we're heading here. But as we get through it right here, we get to, as we said, from true knowledge and discernment. So I think we got true knowledge, obviously, true knowledge of God. What would you describe as discernment? So let's go back and reread verse 9 again. Pray that your love may abound yet more and more in knowledge and in judgment or discernment. Judgment is the word there, but discernment we're going to see here is a word that gets thrown out here a lot in a lot of the commentaries I found. How would you define discernment? I know it's going to be a vocabulary test today, didn't it?
Rightly dividing the word of truth.
Right through abiding what?
Rightly dividing the word of truth.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a great example. Here's what the dictionary defines as this. The first one says the ability to judge well, and then also the dictionary had, from a Christian point of view, perception, in the absence of judgment with a view to obtaining spiritual guidance with understanding. So discernment. So we see right here as we get through it, in Hebrews 5:14 it says, "But strong meat belongeth to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil." So just, again, recognizing things, having a great sense of judging spiritual things there. So it says, so biblical love, has to be based, on proper discernment. And here's one right here. This one author says this: many of whom have discernment among Christians, unfortunately, many have abandoned this crucial quality. It shows that they have become anti-intellectual, trusting in feelings or in tradition, and have thrown Scripture and sound reason to win. Discernment is the ability to understand, interpret, and apply truth skillfully. Therefore, discernment is a cognitive act. So we kind of see where we're kind of getting to the extremes here, so where I'm trying to guide us to. So from that point, as we continue on right here, we go from there. That biblical love, let me ask you this, is biblical love a static thing, or is it something that you can increase and grow in your walk? Yeah. And this is something we should constantly be working to have a growth mindset for. As we grow more and more in knowledge and discernment, our growth, our love, our ability for biblical love should grow. Has anyone arrived at perfect love? Not human. Just one. That's Jesus, isn't it? So it's always a work. So that right there, that tells us it's just always a work in progress. And it kind of gets back to what I said about the agape love, and what, if you had to describe, if Jesus is the perfect love, what would you use what would be the terms to describe that? How would you describe Jesus' love for us? What would be the term we would use? What defines, let me read this again. What is the heart of biblical love? Said it earlier.
Sacrifice.
Self-sacrifice. Sacrifice. Jesus did the ultimate there, didn't he? Went to the cross for our sins. So we see there again, sacrifice. 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 7. Charity, it kind of talks about, it kind of defines some of the things he says as far as love, or characteristics. Love suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself. It is not puffed up. Doth not behave itself unseemly. Seeketh not her own. Is not easily provoked. Thinketh no evil. Rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in truth. Beareth all things. Believeth all things. Hopeth all things. Endureth all things. We've all heard that. I still love. As I said, love is patient, love is kind. So, and I think as you go through that list, you could probably, if this was, if I was really wanting to, put the teacher on you right there, I'd say go through the Bible and find examples of Jesus, each one of those characteristics, and it'd be pretty easy to find with it. He shows, obviously he does show. How does he show patience with his love with us? We don't deserve any second chances, do we? But constantly, as much as I mess up, all I got to do is come back to him, ask for forgiveness, and he's always just to forgive, isn't he? So that's an example of the patience right there. So that's kind of, as I said, you can go on in verse 9 right there. You could probably, I guess, and this is getting into Brother Nathan, you could probably preach a whole sermon from verse 9 right there, can't you? So 10 and 11, so we'll go to those. And then we're going to come back around here. We'll get back into the extremity right there. it talks about biblical love. You know, so we kind of, you know, it needs involves knowledge, discernment. It is something that we should continually grow. So, what should all that produce for us if we have that biblical? You know, as we're why should we be growing to biblical love? Frida's giving me the look like, oh, she's thinking.
Oh, I'm thinking.
By having the discernment and the knowledge and growing into biblical love, what should that lead us to?
Sharing it.
Second?
Sharing it.
Sharing it, yep, that's one thing. Sharing it for sure, yeah. We want to share, you know, show it. People should see it in us. So the number one, like I said, biblical love results in sharing it and showing it. It should also show us living what type of life? A godly life. And if we're doing all those things, living a godly life, showing, sharing love, end of the day, who should be getting the glory at that point? God. We should be doing it, like I said, for that purpose. Not for ourselves, not to puff ourselves up, but for God's glory. And, you know, God's, you know, as far as biblical, godly living involves a few priorities here. And it says, as we get into it, biblical love results in godly living that gives God the glory. So godly living involves having the right priorities. So that's one thing there. So what does that mean? The right priorities. You know, you ever anyone here with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Anyone ever done that study? Yeah, I've had to sit through that. Then I found out how much the people that present that to the school systems get paid to do those seminars. I was like, I don't know. I think it was one I can't remember. I just know they had that little talking stick and all that, and it was just. I mean, I'm just like, this is anybody that's successful. Anyway, God makes a lot of money off of it, but keep the main thing the main thing. You know, I've seen other things where a guy puts rocks in a jar, and he fills it up with smaller rocks and sand. He goes, are you worried about the big rocks, or are you worried about the sand? How many times are we really, when it gets down to it, we're worried about the sand, or as I like to say, we can't see the forest because of the trees? What are some examples that, as far as Christians, where that's a situation? We get caught up in all the, get caught up in all the, really, at the end of the day, little stuff that doesn't really play to the big picture, does it? Well, Frida got mad at me because she made baked beans, but I did too for the dinner on Sunday, or hey, man, we're leaving because I wanted blue carpet, they wanted beige carpet. You get what I'm saying? So I'm using some extreme examples there. Because at the end of the day, what is the main thing? What is the priority? We should focus our life on what? Loving God. But like we said, if we have the discernment and the knowledge and loving God, if we show and share that love, who's going to be glorified? God is. And that's the priority. That's that's what should be. It says it's vital that you focus your life on loving God and others based on true knowledge and discernment. If that is at the center of your life, if you're doing those things, shouldn't everything else fall into place? I mean, Jesus tells us that, don't he? Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbors, you love yourself. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but then on verse 40, what does it say? All the other commandments and all that lead from those things, don't they? If you're doing those things, it's going to fall into place. Next thing, it says godly living involves integrity. We look at one here, and it says, as we continue on, how would you define integrity?
High standards.
High standards?
Doing what you're supposed to do.
Doing what?
Giving nobody more.
Ah, good one. Doing what you're supposed to do when no one's looking. That's a good example. High standards, good example. All of that. Does that mean we got to be perfect? Is that what it means? Paul says blameless.
We're not gonna be perfect, but we've gotta try to be.
Not be perfect, but be best, right? Try to be the best we can, best version of ourselves. Maybe? When I say best, I'm talking about, hey, we're doing our best. What are you laughing about?
Nothing.
Tell me now. You're
Nothing.
making me uncomfortable. All right, here's what this commentary says about the word blame. It says, these words don't imply perfection. It says, it means to be pure, unmixed, without hypocrisy, walk without stumbling. It says, since God looks on the heart to be sincere and blameless, it means to live openly before God, judging sin on the thought level. And I don't know what that last part means, but I think the part before it, basically living openly before God. And I think, it says here, just don't live a double life. What does they say? Christian on Sunday, devil on Monday. So, be true. I think, and I've shared this a lot. Last time I taught, if you remember, we were doing the minor prophets. And I think from what I got out of that lesson over and over and over and over again was the fact that how the minor prophets railed against insincere worship. And it's just that has really stuck with me. So, but anyway, so integrity, we said proper priorities, integrity. Godly living involves living in light of Christ's coming. In other words, growing and discerning love is understanding that living in the light of Christ's soon coming, because eventually what's going to happen? We're all going to stand before Him, aren't we? So if you realize that today you could be face to face with Christ, when you think of it right there, when you're going to be standing before Him, that should motivate you, for godly living, self-sacrificing love. Godly living involves bearing fruit through Jesus Christ. So that's another one, fourth one. I think we understand that. You think about it right here. What do you think they use the term fruit there?
Something I could understand.
Yeah, it's something to relate to. In this point here, I think, because we go back to it, we're talking about love. It's a growth process, and when you plant the apple tree, you don't have apples immediately, do you? It's got to grow, and how do you do that? You got to water it, you got to nurture it. Same thing with our Christian life. We got to keep working on the knowledge and keep working on our discernment and then we're going to produce fruit, aren't we? It's a process. So. That's what it says. The Christian life is a process of growing in righteous character and deeds. The word fruit implies this is a process and not something that's instantaneous. The word picture also implies that is the life of Christ working in and through us that produces fruit. That's in John 15, verses 1 through 6. I'll read those here. It says, Jesus says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, He taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit, He purgeth, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine. No more can ye, except ye abide in me. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me ye can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch and is withered. And men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. So, from there, like I said, as we grow in true knowledge and discernment through His Word, the fruit of the Spirit, whose first characteristic is love, is produced in us. And so we see some other examples of that here. Galatians 5, verses 22 to 23. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. Titus 2, chapter 2, verse 14. Who gave Himself for us, that He might redeem us for all iniquity and purify unto Himself a peculiar people zealous of good works. So that right there says, you know, as we, you know, grow in that and grow in that love, another product of that love is we're going to be wanting to do good works. Why? For our own glory? No, to glorify who? Glorify God. So it's all, it all fits into it like that. Finally, the last characteristic here talks about godly living results in glory and praise to God. As we abound in discerning love, which leads to godly character and good deeds, God will be exalted in and through us, so that both we and others will praise Him for His grace and power. The ultimate goal of the Christian life is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. So that's kind of hits on some of it up. So say all that. We've gone through all that. We talked about the water, and it was extremities, wasn't it? So, you know, as we look at it, because some people days, you know, basically talks about love and things. It's basically saying, hey, we got to accept you know, that's just, you got to accept everything people do. That's love. Is that what love is? No. Can we have the opposite of that spectrum as well? Where, hey, where we got too much, it's the letter of the law. Who's that more like? What was the Pharisees' problem? Wasn't they didn't follow the law or didn't know the law? But what was their issue? What was Jesus' issue with the Pharisees?
Well, that's all they were worried about. They weren't worried about loving people.
Yeah, they weren't worried about loving people, and they were worried about following the law and all that to exalt who?
Themselves.
More than them. It's about the power for themselves. Wasn't it? So let's take a look here at Jesus. And, you know, and it kind of gets into this, you know, because as Christians, we are commanded that we're supposed to confront sin, aren't we? But we need to confront it, but we can't be what, though, as we do. We're supposed to confront it, but when we do it, what do a lot of people, what's the first thing they say? We're being what? Judgmental. Are there extremes where we can be one or the other? Who's the example for us? Who shows us best how to confront sin? What's an example of Jesus confronting sin?
Like the woman at the well.
That's it. Woman at the well. One of my favorites. Always get moved right there because I remember when I was first reading that when I was first saved, and I just felt I could feel Jesus' compassion for that woman, and I love, okay, He's got to have that for me. He's got that for me too. Now, when He confronted that sin, or when He confronted that woman with sin, did He show compassion to her? Told her. Now, showed love, didn't He? But did He let her off the hook about her sin? He told her what? Go and sin no more, basically, right? And again, I'm terrified, I'm not going, but same way when the Pharisees brought the woman caught in adultery too. Remember that's when He started, what are you going to do about this? And He started drawing in the sand, and He told them. So I think there's, you know, it gets back, that's kind of where I was listening, and we can be too extreme on either end. I think Jesus kind of shows us right there, you know, He shows, hey, when we confront sin, what was Jesus' motivation for confronting sin? Why should we confront sin? What should be our goal when we confront sin? Yeah, that's about 58 questions. Restoration. And that should be the motivation. Unfortunately, when it gets into judgmental, don't you think now maybe a lot of people are having to do this where they, you know, it might be your boss or something. I'm not talking biblical things here. They confront you. It's not for you to do right. It's just so they can say, I got you. Hey, I caught you. I got you. I'm following the rules. You're not. I'm above you. You know, I think that's where, you know, we got to be careful. And I think there, if you look at it right there, if you compare, I'm not saying, like I said, I just want y'all's thoughts on this. Compare Jesus confronting the woman at the well, or the adulteress that was brought by the Pharisees, compared to how He confronted the Pharisees and the people in the temple and His disciples. Which one was he usually a little rougher with?
People should know better.
Yeah. So people should know that. I don't mean when, because when we say, what's the term? Rebuke. When we hear the word rebuke, we think of more of like football coach. Yeah, we think of that. That's not what it should be. So, I mean, it is a correction, but we always think of that as being very negative or a very hostile experience, don't we? And I think Jesus shows us there on that. But what's the, and here's the last thing, and I'll close because we're running short of time. It's like I tell the guys when I recruit. At the end of the day, I try to develop a relationship with those guys because at the end of the day, I've got to sometimes tell them some hard truths sometimes. Hey, you're not good enough yet. No, you don't need to go in the transfer portal. But what's the purpose of that relationship? They got to be able to do what? They got to trust me that I'm going to look out for their best interests. And how do I build that trust? Through a relationship. And that's the same way as we says here. I think it's one thing if I just walk down to a perfect stranger and like, hey, you're sinning. You need to get it right, stuff like that. Probably the reaction. But if I go to, or if I'll just flip it around. Brother Nathan, hey Scott, I was at the game Saturday and I saw how you was talking about the fish. You need to think about more how you're representing the kingdom of God. I know what's happening. Now he's telling me something tough right there, but me and him have a relationship because when you have that's community, you can be a lot more community, and I think that's one of the things there I read there that I was like, that makes sense. If I just walk up to a stranger and just start pointing out every wrong thing, I get, I'm like an official, I don't know, start pointing out every wrong thing he does, he usually doesn't react too positive to it. But on a serious note, same thing. When we have a fellow brethren or sister that we have and again, I think it's all back. What's the purpose? What should be the motivation? Restoration, and that should be a product because of what? Godly love we have. And that's how, another way, and it sounds funny, is obviously sharing God's love and the gospel and things, but also with each other, like sometimes, hey, somebody's out of line, let's get back in line, stuff like that. I think we get a good example from Jesus on how to do that with not only sinners, because I think if you walk up to somebody that's unsaved, should we expect a non-Christian to act like us? So I think Jesus shows us something there. So
Well, I think what you said about a relationship, if you don't know somebody and you just start being judgmental, everybody's reaction to that is
that's
Christian
they're going on defense. Yeah, they're going on defense.
They're going to be defensive, and I think that's why we need to show God's love to people and try to form relationships so they will learn about what they should and shouldn't do.
So, I agree with that. And that's, I think there we see, with that, I think, like I said, at the end of the day, get back to fundamentals. How did Jesus handle it? He did show compassion for the sinner, told her what she's, but he didn't let her off. He did point out, and then did show biblical truth. And I think that's, that's an important characteristic of it myself. But anyway, I was a little nervous because at the end of this lesson right here, I was like, man, that's kind of a sticky subject right there. How do we get it? But Lord, like I said, he led me to some stuff, so I felt good about it. But anyway, just think about that. And all my educators in here, again, we've went around those kids that we just, try to show that compassion if we can. That takes a lot of praying. But seriously, and one of the best things I heard is remember everybody's a product of their experiences, and remember that. And I think that helps you. That helps you show compassion, have a little more compassion for people and stuff like that. Anything else? All right, next week. So getting to the next lesson there. Like I said, that was 3 verses right there. I feel like I could have went another hour. Session 3, we're going to be in furthering the gospel, and then we're going to go verses 8 through 12. At this track, we'll be able to cover Philippians by the time I'm ready to retire. So if there's nothing else, let's close with a quick word of prayer. Lord, again, we're thankful for this day. We're thankful for all your many blessings for each and every person here, Lord. Thank you for just giving us safe travel here, Lord. Thank you for your word. Allow us this time to study it, Lord. Lead, guide, direct us to apply it to our lives, Lord, that we can take what we talked about love today, where people will see your love in us as we walk out each and every day in this world, Lord. Lord, be with us as we go through our worship service. May everything we do be pleasing to you, Lord. Lord, just keep on leading, God, direct us as we continue with our project, Lord. Just give us a spirit of unity, Lord, as we continue along that path.